Well, good morning, good afternoon. Let me change our little cover there. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Annette Richmond, and this is the Smarter Career and Business Moves LinkedIn Live show. And I'm excited to have Bill with me today. We met on Clubhouse a couple of years ago, back in the whole Clubhouse heyday. And then, we've got to know each other on LinkedIn. And this topic, I think, kind of came up through us commenting on somebody else's post. And so I'd like you to start by just telling us a little bit about kind of, who you are, what you do, and particularly how it relates to the topic, which is one that you chose.
Well, thank you so much, Annette. I appreciate you inviting me. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart for many reasons. This whole concept of remote working is new to a lot of people, and there's a couple different reasons why it's close to me. And one is technology. So I own two companies, a data networking company and a telecommunications company, both needed for remote workers.
Mm-hmm.
But since I own two companies, I have employees who also could potentially and do like to work remotely. So I thought, I can see both sides of it, the challenges of working from home and also the challenges for company owners or bosses of would-be remote workers.
Yeah, obviously everything cannot be done remotely. And we were chatting before we went live, and I mentioned that I had looked up a couple stats this morning, and I saw that USAA is bringing hybrid employees back 4 days a week, which seems like a lot of in office for hybrid. Seems more like a, remote Friday situation to me. And then also FedEx bringing their employees back in 3 days a week, their office employees back 3 days a week. And recruiters have told me that when they see a company announcing this RTO, return to office, that they say, okay, we can go in there now and poach some of those employees. So I hear that. But I'm curious to hear what your take is, because as we also discussed, it's one thing for, if you've been in a company for a long time, but if you're an early careerist, or if you're someone who's new to a company, I've had a couple of friends experience that, starting new and it's remote. So talk a little bit about what you see are the disadvantages.
Well, I think to my first real job after college, and where I learned how to drink coffee, because my social life didn't change, but because I had to be at work at 8 a.m, I discovered caffeine early in my career, and having that that camaraderie at the office was great, and not just for work purposes, but for social purposes too, right? I mean, and so I found that to be something that people would probably miss. I have two daughters. One's 26, one's 29. The 26-year-old graduated in 2020 in our living room and has not worked a day in the office. She's worked for two different companies, 100% remote. As a matter of fact, earlier this spring, she just finished working remotely in Great Britain, traveling up and down Scotland and Ireland, and she was in London. So she worked remotely. The other daughter, 100% in the office. And, me personally, do I like working from home? Yes, I do. But I think my definition of work from home and my wife's definition of work from home are a little different. Like, I'm here to do work, and she's like, oh, you're home. Can you look at this, or can we do this, or whatever? I'm like, no, I'm working from home. So it's a bit of a challenge. I have to separate myself sometimes when I need to focus. But I think that the takeaway is that you lose that social part.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, I think the bigger part for me and my company is that cross training, that working together,
Mm-hmm.
teaching each other, asking each other questions. Sure. Can you do it over Teams, over Zoom? Yeah, sure. But there's nothing like, banging on the wall and saying, "Hey, are you in there?" In the next office, or walking down the hall and saying, "Hey, have you ever seen this before?" Especially in technology, a lot of it has to do with experience. And so
Mm-hmm.
the youngsters, they're learning. Well, they're not going to learn as much or as fast sitting at home. That's my opinion.
No, well, it's interesting, the take on that. And my situation is similar in the sense that obviously I work from home. I have my home office. I've worked here for many years and I love it. I love being able to, just be here and have the flexibility. My husband has his own business. He used to have his office in a room down the hall and he moved to the downstairs because I was bugging him too much. And he was like, okay, it was too much like, oh, what about this? What about that? And of course, the dog. So I am now the sole dog concierge during the day to, let them in and out and in and out, so they can get
Yeah.
cookies and treats. But, and I think it is also personality. And, some people like to be in the office and some people prefer to be home. But back to your point about the social. Now, I did hear someone recently say, it was a recruiter. I cannot remember who it was because I watch a lot of videos on TikTok and whatever. And that one of the reasons that employees find it difficult to be successful, because, as a business owner, you cannot, someone like me, if I'm working full time, I can't assume that my boss knows what I'm doing. My boss's boss knows what I'm doing. Whether, even if I'm in the office, I need to make sure that I have that communication with them. But what this recruiter said is that if employees are not successful being remote, it's because the company has not set them up to be. Now, being in technology, you're nodding your head. So, what do you think that he actually meant by that? Because it seems like we could, hop on Zoom or something. I mean, I have friends in other parts of the world that I chit chat with regularly. So, what's that disconnect?
Well, there's a phrase that I tell my daughters, or I tell younger people, it's called FaceTime, right? You need to have FaceTime with management and upper management. They need to see you. Sure. How often would you, as a youngster in your 20s, have the opportunity to have a chit chat with the COO at the coffee machine, for example? You're not going to schedule a Zoom with the chief operating officer or the CFO to chit chat. It's just not going to happen. If you're going to have a Zoom with them, there's going to be a reason for it. So you lose that whole social aspect of FaceTime. And to your point, yeah, companies, how do you substitute for that? I mean, do you implement a coffee chat half an hour where everybody's on a Zoom call? Some people do. Like
Mm-hmm.
my younger daughter, they had happy hours on Fridays. And what happened was, it was a small company. The company would order appetizers and 2 drinks for everybody in the company, wherever they were, to be delivered. And then they would have a Zoom call and have their snacks. So they got it. But I think you're right. I think a lot of companies are not prepared to, substitute FaceTime.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I was hosting a thing at a virtual conference. It was like a party opening event thing. And what we did was we sent people leis. So everybody had their lei, and we sent them cocktail recipes.
Yeah.
So everybody could kind of make the same cocktail and we could enjoy them together. So, I mean, that's like the very low budget idea of it. But so I can, but I do think I'm just thinking about my own experience in corporate. My last one, working for a fairly large firm, I worked at the headquarters, but it was relatively small. I mean, we were all on one floor of a building,
Mhm.
and so we shared the coffee room. But what if you're working for, I don't know, like Diageo? I mean, does it really? Do you get that same benefit? I'm guessing they're not. If I'm an employee there, and I'm working, say, in marketing, then I'm not going to be, rubbing elbows with the COO in our little kitchen.
Yeah, particularly if you have multiple offices all over the country. However, what typically happens is, they'll do visits. The executives will go visit the branches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you were working remotely, that's probably going to be all hands on deck, everybody back in the office because the big cheese is coming to the office, everybody clean up, that kind of stuff. But in general, you're right. The bigger companies don't have as much as that. But sometimes if you're in your 20s, whoever's in charge of that regional office
Mm-hmm.
that's enough to start with. You just want to talk to the next level up or the next level above them. You're
Uh-huh.
not going to you can't go chit chat with the CEO of a large Fortune 50 company on the regular.
Yeah, no, I get that. One of my friends actually used to work at Gartner, and was working there during the pandemic. And she had an arrangement where she was working from home anyway, and she used to travel down to the campus. I think it was like once a quarter or something for meetings, and she would stay nearby for a week, and they would really, really engage that way. And that really afforded a lot of time like spent together, so you really did get to know the people you were working with. So what do you think about that idea?
No, I mean, I think that the companies that aren't doing that are going to fall behind. I mean, you really miss the opportunity to because it's an advantage for management to know the youngsters also, right? I mean,
Mhm.
how do you choose your plans for succession and
Mhm.
who's promotable without really knowing them? I mean, somebody's filling out that review, somebody's filling out that questionnaire, somebody's filling out that form and saying, check, they're promotable. But are you going to be 100% comfortable on signing off on something that you haven't really met them ever? I mean, I think it's tough for really big companies.
Yeah, it's interesting because that just made me think. I've worked with several clients, and one of the things, the ones that work for larger companies, were tapped for these sort of leadership programs, and I'm thinking that's maybe partly what you're talking about. That,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that that's how it is. Kind of going up the road. But one thing I do want to ask is, there are some positions that really are not in the office, kind of like if you're in sales, if you're in regional sales or something, even though your office might be, in the office, you personally are likely like on the road all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm kind of thinking that the final answer is kind of like it depends. It depends on your situation and whatnot. But do you think it's easier for someone who's a more seasoned, although I hate that word seasoned, someone who's been working for, say, 10 years, 10, 15 years, but they're starting a new job and it's remote. Do you think that they would have an advantage over someone who's an, early careerist?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that no matter what you do, when you're starting off your career in your post college days or post technical training or whatever is, what is the pace of work?
Um,
How hard do you have to work? And I always tell people it's called work. It's you gotta go for it. And so without any point of reference, it might be tough for them to know, and maybe they might go too far the other way. It's 8:30 at night, they're still working on that email or and so then you get that work-life balance problem because they're at home and their computer's right there and they need to get that thing done for their boss. And would they do that if they were in the office? Well, they might work late some nights, but maybe not all the time. So I think there definitely are jobs that can be 100% remote from the beginning, pretty much. And one of the big ones that we work with is call centers, right? So because of the technology of today, we had a client who had 50 people in a room answering phones, and we deployed our solution. They all work from home now. And guess who they love? Me. So it was a
Of
big win
course.
for us. Yeah, it was a big win for us. And so their whole entire call center works remotely. And so perfect for them, because then they took that space and they repurposed it. So there's that whole real estate piece of the get back to work, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know a local company that had a campus near us actually sold off one of their buildings because they just don't need it anymore, because they have gone virtual first. And it seems that when you mention work-life balance, that was a big part of why people, when suddenly they were able to work from home because they pandemic, so they had to, and it afforded them the opportunity to maybe go, well, not at the height of the pandemic, but once things loosened up a bit, to go out if they had to go and see their kid in school, or they could make
Right.
it to the basketball game or the football game, or whatever, something like that. Or like for me, I love to be able to run out to the grocery, run over to Trader Joe's when it's not busy, and then come back and work. Well, and my understanding is that's how people, that's one of the biggest issues that people have with going back to work, like 5 days a week. So do you think it should be a balance, that should be what the employers are going for?
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be great. And one of the other big things that you didn't mention, so you're up in the Northeast. I grew up in the
Mhm.
Washington, D.C. area, the big cities. What about commute time? I
Yeah.
mean, it's not uncommon for people to commute from Long Island to downtown New York, and it'd be an hour outside of Chicago, take the train in, be an hour or more. Atlanta, big cities like that. So if you're commuting an hour one way, I mean, that's 10 hours a week
Hmm.
where that you just got back, right? 10 hours, that's a lot. So
Yeah.
there's some real value in that. And I get that. Now, smaller cities and, rural areas, where my office is 6 miles from my house. So 3 traffic lights, so if it takes me 15 minutes, that's rush hour.
Well, I like that you mentioned that, because I am actually in the Metro New York area. And we are a big commuter area into the city. It's kind of like the city. Most of the people that live nearby me probably work in the city. My husband did for years. And so that was a thing, between the train and the subway. And with some people, they have to drive to the train station. It can be quite extensive. But I also must say that the last job that I worked in corporate, the stretch of interstate near me is like the top two in the country,
Yeah.
even busier than LA. And it used to take me, from here to where I used to work, if I hop in my car now, mid morning, it would take me, 15 minutes. It used to take me over half an hour to 45 minutes every single day because of the traffic. And so, I mean, what do you think? And here's someone that says Jennifer I'm going to mispronounce your name, Wisniewski. Sorry about my butcher there of your name. That people commute from Philly to New York City daily. I always use it as a time to read per mobile device. Um, so I'm wondering if she's working, or if it's reading for pleasure, because that would make a difference too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people that do have that commute, they do take advantage of their train time and things like that. And so, yeah, maybe they do work an extra hour or to and fro. But it's definitely your areas that you can do, or things that you can do on that commute, are limited, right? So if you had that hour at your house,
Oh yeah.
would you do the same thing as you are on the train?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, that's the thing too. Like me working from home, I can throw in a load of laundry. And while the laundry's washing, I'm here working. And, and I'm sure it's like that. So what, and so Jennifer just tells us she was reading for pleasure. Okay. And
Okay.
one of the things that my husband had always told me too with the train, because I thought of it as being, you see train trips on movies and people are chatting but the cardinal rule during commute time is you cannot speak. If
Yeah.
I took the train into the city with him in the morning because I had a meeting or something and I'd want to chit chat, and he's like, "Oh no, you can't speak," and it's just not allowed to speak during the commute. So I don't know. It is such a quandary. So what do you think, you know, is the best way for leadership to approach this? Now, I talked to somebody just in the last couple of weeks who said that their company, they personally work remote, but their company is making people come back. Everybody's got to come back to the office. And if people leave, people leave. They figure, well, you know what, there's more people out there, which I think in a way says little about the company. But I mean, do you think that's the attitude? Like, if you don't like it, then go someplace else?
Yeah, pound sand, right?
Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of factors. So I think what happened during the pandemic and sort of that push for remote work was that the employee side, overpowered the companies with we're working remote, and part of it was because of the pandemic. But then what happened is, and my opinion is that what's best for the company and what's best for the employee. It has to be, there has to be a balance there. And one of the things that's really pushing maybe this back to work thing is think about the real estate. So when big companies sign a lease for a building, they don't sign a 1-year lease. It's a 10, 15, 20-year lease, right? So you have 100,000 square feet in some city that's empty, right? And people are looking around and they're thinking, well, this isn't good for us. We can't get out of the lease. So we need to fill this space back up, at least until the lease is up. And I think, commercial real estate is going to suffer over the next 10 years as people's leases come up. They're going to shrink because they want to have some hybrid, some mix, some percentage, and each company's going to be different. What I do is, I basically, during the pandemic, of course, we went and did all of the, sort of forced, or safety. But since then, I basically, because of what we do, we need to be here, but I still give some work from home, kind of like that, what you mentioned earlier, the Friday, except I have everybody pick a day so that we're not all not here at the same time. And they love it. But I also tell them, look, if you can't be at home, if there's some reason for you to be here, like a project or something that's going on, a deadline or whatever, then you need to work here.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll switch your day and maybe you won't get it this week. Sorry.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I remember working for a small firm and we were open. It was actually a car dealership. That's what I did when I was going to school. When I was going to college, I was looking for car dealerships during the day. And it was a very small place. And so, of course, because we're customer service, we were open on like Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. And so we used to alternate. Some of us would get off Christmas Eve, some of us would get off New Year's Eve. And that's how we were able to do the holidays. But I just want to say hello to some of our friends here. So our friend Jillian, who is happy to be here with us. Thank you, Jillian. Always lovely to see you. And I want to say hi to Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. And I don't know.
So do you want to hear a fun fact about Kevin Turner?
Sure.
Kevin Turner and I were born in the same hospital.
Oh. Okay.
In DC. Totally off subject, but hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Okay. Well, I will have to remember that fun fact.
Yeah, it might be on a trivia.
So, all right. So tell me, because, as you said, you're kind of in the technology. So you set people up to work from home and you're kind of, I guess, seeing it from both sides as the technology person and as the business owner. What do you think is the best way for employers to sort of lure the employees back, make them want to come back to the office, at least in a hybrid situation?
Yeah, I'm, I'm of a particular age and I'm a little old school. Um, and so I've had to, because prior to 2020, my vision of somebody working from home was laying on the couch with the remote in their hand. That was my mental vision, right? Seriously.
Mhm.
And I'm like, can't work from home, right? So then I've really been, old dog, new tricks, trying to learn that, what it means to us. Can they do what we need them to do? What benefit is it for them? And I think that one of the things you have to be really careful of as in management or business ownership is to be consistent and to communicate whatever the rules are, make sure everybody knows them and make sure they're consistent. So Joe doesn't get 3 days and Sam gets one day. And
Mhm.
why is that? Well, there might be compelling reasons. And maybe the way you do it is based on how long you've been with the company, so that your first year maybe you don't get any remote work.
Mhm.
Now
Mhm.
I know the recruiters would probably, well, we can't, how are we going to find anybody who wants to work? You'll find people. You can always find people. And so maybe year 2 you get a day and maybe 2 days to work remote or whatever. But I think each person has to put on their thinking cap and kind of think what's best for us, what's best for this department, what's best for this company. And they're all going to be different. The barn door's open, the cow's out, remote work is here to stay.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of, finding that balance and what's best for all.
Yeah. Well, I will mention one thing because I know that I've seen online and I've seen people talking about on like TikTok, and there is sort of something that you can purchase and set your mouse on, and it just moves around your screen. So because some companies do monitor, whether or not you're actually working, you're at your computer, which I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, I think that personally, and I'm not a spring chicken, but still I think that that's really just not a really cool thing to be doing if people are
Yeah,
doing that.
it's
It's like,
it's tough, big brother, but the technology's out there. It's not just, monitoring. I mean, there's actually a call center application that we have that will take a screenshot every 10 seconds of somebody's screen. What are they doing? Screenshot. What are they doing? Screenshot. So you got these remote people. I, you know, it's available. Do I think it's a great idea? I'm kind of like you. I'm like, it's a trust thing, right?
yeah,
If you
exactly.
don't trust them, why are they there? And if they don't trust you, why are you there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be a two-way street. And I mean, there's got to be some level of trust there between both of you to make it work.
Oh, I agree. So I think that that is really the answer. There has to be a relationship of trust between the employees and the employer. So we've talked a lot about this. We've talked about it before the show as well. Is there anything that you'd like to add that you think is something important for people to know before we say goodbye? Because our time is just about up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, especially the younger crowd, um, um, patience, you know, the job that you find today may not have remote work, but you sort of have to pay your dues a little bit and have some patience. I think that what we're seeing in general is, if I look at on LinkedIn, I look at resumes all the time, and you got jump, 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 9 months, 18 months, 16 months, and there may be compelling reasons for each of those, but be patient, find the right situation, and you know, maybe hybrid work will come, maybe remote work will come, and maybe not. But remember, they're paying you.
That's true. They don't call it work for nothing. It's
Exactly.
not hobby, it's work. So I thank you so much. This has been such an interesting conversation and something that often doesn't come on this show. And so I always love to have something something different and sort of two sides of a situation.
Yeah,
So and
it's a
much
pleasure.
appreciated. So thanks so
Pleasure.
much. And everyone else, we'll see you next week.